Hello everyone. In the last video we looked at the way we can actually import vector data, and we'll actually start working with vector data. So I'll try to follow now the module of creating a basic map, basically chapter 3 of the QGIS Training Manual. And we'll start off by having the idea how we can again import the data, but then we'll move onwards to see how we can have different ways of loading shapefiles. First of all, one of the things that I find very useful is in QGIS in the browser panel. So that would be the browser panel 2 I've got here. You can actually create a favorites directory, and if you do create a favorites directory, the big advantage of that is that you can then add different data to that directory and work with this more easier. So the way you can add the working directories, basically you will have your home window in a folder in the browser panel, and if you click on that you can just navigate to wherever your data is. In my case it's the desktop QGIS training data, and if you go to that directory right over there in home QGIS training data, it's in this case where I've put it in, I can just press add as a favorite, and you will see that my favorite list is now updated, and I've got a directory here with desktop QGIS training data. Okay, perfect. So this directory will have all of the training data available to me that I want to use. If I want to have a more specific directory, because we've got so many folders inside of this QGIS training data, I can just add the EPSG 4326 directory, which I'll be using. So I can right click again, add as a favorite, and now in my directory listing you will see that I should have, here it is, the EPSG 4326 folder, and here's all of the data that actually as it is I can import. So what we saw in our last lab is, or video, is how we could easily import the data by just pressing the add vector layer and just adding the data along. So again, add vector layer, browse, and I could choose shapefiles here. So shapefiles here, and just add the data that I wanted to. But with the favorites folder, it's even easier because I can just pick up that, select this layer with a shapefile and just drag it along and just add it like this. So buildings, drag it over here, and or I can drag basically anywhere. I can even drag the layers panel and it'll show up as well. Roads and water. So I have all of my different layers added. Again, to zoom into some certain area that I'm interested in watching and looking at better, I can just go and press right click, and right click I can go and zoom to layer. Whoa. Right, so, and it refreshes and zooms into the layer where water is. Or if I want to zoom into the buildings layer, right click and zoom into the buildings extension layer. Okay, now one of the things that you can also do, and I think that is something important to note, is that you can add the vector layer as SQLite files, and it's better because you get the entire bulk of shapefiles that you want to add immediately. So you have to really drag layer per layer and add it over. So you actually can create a sort of repository of data. So basically you have a database where you can load layer from. Now the advantage of using a database, the DBMS management system, Microsoft Access would be such an example, is that you can oftentimes load more complex data. So let's start by loading our land use SQLite so you can see how that then looks like if we load it. So the way you load it is just press this add spatial light layer, so it's a little feather over here, and you choose the directory where you want to do the connection to. Sorry about that. You just choose directory by pressing new, and when you click on new, you just go to your location basically where data is. So desktop, QGIS training manual data, EPCSG, and land use SQLite. Good. So that's the data that you want to add. Press open, and once you've downloaded, you've defined with the browser the add Spatialite table, just press connect, and you will see the geometry type you have. So it gives you an overview of the table that is available, the types of data you have. In this case, it's a multi-polygon layer. Polygon layers are similar to, the buildings and water layers. In this case, you've got different polygons, just like this over here. You have a column called geometry in it. So just press on add. Sorry, just select the layer you want. So select this here, land use, and press add. And there you go. You've just added the land use layer into the system. So as you can see, not all files that we actually download or that we use in our GIS environment have to be shape files. And they can be different formats. And SQLite is one of such files that we can use. So if you have added this different layers, we can actually start organizing the layers we want by a given order. And let's try to have the places, because if you look at this, I mean, if places would be under the layer land use, we wouldn't be really able to see the location of places. I'll just zoom into the layer like we did in the other lecture, and you can see that actually the land use layer is covering the places layer, right? So we cannot really see the points. This point, we can really not see it because it's covered. So it's good always to order, and I've mentioned that in the other video. It's always good to order the layers in a way that we can actually visualize all of that. So let's drag again the layer places on top, followed by buildings. Let's add roads afterwards. Water. Rivers just on top of water, and land use. So that way we can sort of see everything. So land use, if I would zoom into this here, wouldn't be any more, wouldn't be any more covering all the other layers. So that's the big advantage of just putting it below. It's a bigger layer, so it looks just more organized, and we can visualize everything we really have as different layer types. So in conclusion, it's important to note that we can actually add different shapefile sources, but we can also add, in this case, SQLite layers that have larger databases of information. So basically that's the first intro of adding a different layer type, and also remembering the importance of working with the distribution of layers. The second thing that I want you guys to know is that we can easily change colors of layers, and obviously if we look at what we have here, I'll just zoom into our full view. Perhaps I'll just zoom into buildings. We can see that we have different types of things, but the colors are really chosen at random, and it makes more sense to choose and put them in colors that make more sense, so that it looks actually more pleasing to the aesthetics of it, to the eye. So to change colors, you have several options that you can do, and I'll familiarize you with one of the most important menus probably that we can use in our videos. So one of the ways is to just right click the layer that you want to change the color to, and just go to properties. Once you go to properties, you'll have the window of the layer properties, and basically the layer property window has so many different options. So that's where we actually do all of the styling of the different elements. For now, we'll just style the color of the map. So we'll go to style, and we'll change the colors, and we will just change the color, fill into something that we deem more pleasant. So I'll use the suggestion of colors that we have in our training manual on page 22. So it's sort of a yellowish shade. So we go to single symbol. We have different symbol types actually. We'll talk about them later. So we go to single symbol. In simple fill, we choose the color we want. And I'll just go to a kind of sort of darkish grayish yellow. Okay. And there are different ways of changing colors that you can do. So you can choose the color just by, by working with the different color hues you've got. But you can also go and set the RGB values, and we'll do that later ahead, where we actually are going to define RGB values for colors. So in this case, let's just use this yellow kind of thing. And note that RGB values vary. So if I vary a little bit the colors, like they will have a different RGB set. So I'll just choose something like that. So my RGB values will be 211, 191, and 70. So I'll just press OK. And the cool thing is that I have also an HTML notation. So what you would like to use colors from HTML websites recommendations, you can actually just copy paste the HTML notation color of it. And finally, you can add the color that you have in as a favorite. So you can just take the current color and put it over here. And you have sort of an overview of the recent colors that have been used. So these have been the recent colors that I've been using in my projects. Press OK. And you see that we have now this color as a preference. Press OK again. And my buildings should be in this color over here. So I'll just take away the other layer so that we get too confused. So if I zoom into my buildings layer, that's the color I have for my buildings. And the same way I have changed the color of the buildings, I will now proceed to change several other layers. So for example, land use, if I right click it and go to properties, I'll just use the random color called land, put that in there. And I actually don't like the color of the buildings. I think the color of the buildings would be better in gray. So remember how I said I could right click it and go to properties? I actually can also double click it. And if I double click on the layer, I can just choose, and again, simple fill, and I can just write an RGB, and I like 230, 230, 230 as an RGB. Because it's a pretty gray shade that I find interesting. It's a pretty neutral kind of color. So I've got my buildings now as gray, and my water shouldn't be green. So I'm just gonna change the water. So the same way that I right click on properties, I can actually double click. I'm just gonna double click, and I'm taken to my layer properties. And in my layer properties, I can just go here and choose a color. And if I just go to the fill and colors, I can change it here as well and just get my blue. I can also go to simple fill, which has a more sophisticated menu, and I can choose, I can define my color with more detail. So I'll just make it a darker, more convincing shade of blue like this. Okay, I'll add that to my projects as well. And this one, so I've got my both colors. So I'm going to take that color and press apply. And now my water will be blue, my land use will be yellow, the roads can be changed as well in terms of color. And basically, this is it. So that is how you change different layers and different colors. So it's pretty straightforward. Thanks for watching.